You're listening to Menopause Natural Solutions, episode 58, Fertility After 40, with fertility specialist Gabriela Rosa. Welcome to Menopause Natural Solutions, your podcast for all things perimenopause and menopause related. Stay tuned as naturopath Jennifer Harrington explains how to use natural therapies to transform your health and happiness. Hello ladies, I have a very, very special treat for you today. Now I know I promised you a fertility specialist in the past, but how about a fertility specialist, a Harvard University awarded scholar who has helped over 137,000 couples in over 100 countries? I feel I've over-delivered a little bit here, but let me introduce you to the one and only, the wonderful Gabriela Rosa.
Hello. So lovely to be able to connect with you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for coming, because what I tell my ladies is I am so happy to be saying goodbye to my periods. My shop is shut. I do not want any more children, but I know that I am not all of my listeners, and that there are many women out there who maybe met the right man too late or have been focusing on their career, and they're now over 40 and going, oh no, I forgot to have a baby, or I haven't finished my family. Gabriela, is it too late for them? Is it possible to conceive in perimenopause?
It's such a great question that you ask, because often we have these concerns, these considerations, especially if you think about what society leads us to believe is that, gosh, if you have sex, you're going to get pregnant. Right. And as teenagers, we're constantly being told, be careful, contraception, all of these things. And we grow up with this whole idea that, if you touch a penis, you're going to get pregnant. And the truth is that it's not quite like that. I mean, at peak fertility, a couple certainly has a better than average chance of taking home a healthy baby. And of course, as we grow older and as we develop into our maturity, it definitely becomes harder, but not so much because it's impossible to conceive. It's because biochemical obstacles start to mount in terms of, what it is that needs to happen to have proper biological function. And so it is definitely possible to still conceive in that perimenopausal period. It can be trickier because some women start to have irregular cycles. There are some hormonal imbalances that, can play a role. And of course, when a woman might go to a doctor and say, look, I'm still trying to I'm thinking that I still want to have a baby, or I'm trying to have a baby. They're going to do certain tests, your FSH, your AMH, the egg timer test, quote unquote. And they're going to basically give you a number or give you a, kind of statistic rating of what are your chances of getting pregnant. But the truth is, and I've seen this with my own patients over the last 20 years of treating patients who essentially do want to be pregnant but have faced lots of different obstacles on their fertility journey, that it's not always as straightforward as, you are infertile and you can't have a baby. Often couples are not necessarily diagnosed effectively or investigated properly. And so what ends up happening is that it's not that they can never have a baby, it's that there are obstacles that are getting in the way, that when they are addressed, we can have certainly a very different outcome to what they had experienced up until then. But what most couples unfortunately do is that they try to fix a problem they don't know they have, right? And that is a huge, huge consideration when it comes to conceiving at any age, especially, if we're talking about conception over 40. Understanding what it is that's getting in the way, how these factors or obstacles are playing a part in a particular case is going to be crucial to be able to have a different result, when it comes to having a baby. That's for sure.
Yeah. So you've mentioned things like irregular ovulation. That's kind of something that happens through the perimenopausal period. What else happens to our fertility as we age?
Yeah, look, there are different interesting factors that are at play because, again, societally, what happens? Women are told that women age, women have poor egg quality, and women essentially can't get pregnant. But what we actually now know through the science is that men age and male fertility also declines to the same degree and level.
So it better be a younger new boyfriend.
Yeah, ideally, if we can aim for that, definitely that's going to be a good start. That is for sure. But men's fertility also does decline, and of course, for some couples, it might be that they've been together for 20 years and they now want to have a baby. And so looking at that is going to be something very important to be able to ascertain how do we optimize both partners' health and both partners' fertility, as opposed to just looking at one or the other. Looking and understanding that it is the egg's responsibility. At the end of the day, the egg takes this huge responsibility to address the DNA fragmentation that's happening within the sperm that typically, isn't even tested. Like we test this in the clinic, but most, fertility clinics, they won't even test DNA fragmentation. However, we know that when there's a high, it is crazy. And when there's a high level of DNA fragmentation in the male sperm, the egg has to put in extra effort and extra energy of its own mitochondrial function to be able to actually address some of the fragmentation within that sperm. So what does that mean? Well, instead of utilizing its own energy resources for further development, maturation, and of course, if fertilization occur, that development of that embryo, it's actually going to be utilizing a lot of those energy resources to fix the defects within the sperm. And so that's why when we're talking about fertility, first of all, fertility has to be a team sport. It has to be a situation where both prospective partners, parents, are really looking at what is it that they can do to the very best of their ability to improve every cell within their body, which in turn improves and optimizes their reproductive health as well, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing, a lot of people ask me, gosh, what is it that I can do to improve my fertility if I'm having difficulty conceiving? And that's a really simple little kind of, recommendation that I give to my patients that helps them to remember what it is that they can or can't do, which is act pregnant now to get pregnant later. And surprisingly, this does apply to both partners as well. Even though, Jennifer, I'm sure that you probably would see a world with very fewer children if men had to give birth to babies. But, that is a different consideration that we need to take into account. But right now, if, there are any men listening to this, indulge me for a moment, because really think about it from this perspective. Right now, within your body, you are already carrying 50% of that little baby that you want to create, that you want to see manifest into the outer reality, into the world. And so that being the case, what we need to then understand is this. If understanding that we have 50% of that baby that we want to create in us right now, what are the things that if that baby was 100% there, you would start doing or stop doing at this very moment? Because those are exactly the same things that you would do to nurture your sex cells in order to be able to actually get a different outcome and a different result when it comes to conception. And of course, keeping a healthy pregnancy to term so that you can take home a healthy baby. So there are many different factors that we need to take into consideration, in terms of fertility, and predominantly, and again, something that most couples don't quite understand at every age, is that fertility is a biochemical chain reaction that ultimately gets measured retrospectively. What does that mean? Well, basically, whether you have a baby or you don't have a baby. That's your measure, right? And you only really can say that once you have your baby. So then you can look backwards and you can say, okay, what are the things that I did in order to achieve that result and that outcome when things haven't exactly been straightforward? So we then know that whatever it is that we start doing, putting in place and optimizing in terms of our own biochemistry, if we have a particular end result, let's say that, that is a miscarriage or inability to conceive, or have had some other issues that have arisen in terms of having a baby. If we look at that as an end result and we look at everything that has preceded it as a part of that biochemical chain reaction, and within that pathway or those pathways that lead to the result, we have lots of different obstacles that are getting in the way. Really, the questions that we need to ask are, what are the causative factors here? What are some obstacles that are present that we can remove? What are some obstacles that we can optimize? What are some obstacles that if we really focus on the 20% of the effort to improve those is going to give us 80% of our result toward the new outcome that we're wanting to create? So asking those questions and having more depth in those answers is ultimately what helps couples at any age be able to overcome infertility and recurrent miscarriage to take home a healthy baby. So as much as, yes, it is possible, sometimes, when things haven't been straightforward, or when we perhaps are in a situation where, we feel like we've left it too late or whatever it is, it means work. It means quite a bit of work.
But it sounds like it's worth it if that's your ultimate goal. It's the road you need to take.
Well, and I guess that's really what it comes down to, isn't it? Sometimes people come to us and they're absolutely adamant that they want to have a baby no matter what, no matter what age, we've had patients who come to us post-menopause and they're, 50. And in fact, we had a lady 56 recently conceive on our program. And of course, she used donor egg. And a lot of times people think that, they're going to use donor egg and it's just going to work first time around, and it's just a surefire way of having a baby. The truth is that unfortunately, it doesn't always work to be so straightforward. And so some people need help in optimizing everything they can to be able to take a healthy donor egg cycle, as it become a pregnancy, and of course take a healthy baby to term. So it's possible and it's work. And of course, as you said, if it's absolutely what you want, it's something that we can certainly help with. And of course, there are some times where people come to us and they're like, I kind of want it, like I think I might want to have a baby. There's that conversation of where I think I might want to get a puppy, and you look at all the pros and all the cons and you go, actually not really. I don't really want to have my rugs all messed up and, my furniture all chewed up. And
my bank account destroyed 18
well,
years.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, some people look at those very factual reality checks, and go, yeah, it's a nice idea, but no, not really. I'm at a stage of my life that I want to travel or I want to enjoy other things in my life. Not that you can travel anywhere very far these days, right? But that's essentially what people then reconsider in terms of their life, is what kind of lifestyle do I want to have? And for some, the lifestyle question becomes their ultimate question, because they're like, okay, well, how do I envision? How do I foresee the next 20, 30, 40 years of my life? What would I like to be doing in that time? And if a baby, a child, a family in that sense is not something that absolutely resonates with every cell of your being, you're probably better off with a puppy, right? And some people get to that realization, upon going through the process of understanding what it is that they need to do. They go, too hard basket. I'd rather, not do that. Whereas other people, this lady, for example, that I was mentioning at 56, she was absolutely adamant, right, that was what she wanted to do. And so, when you have that level of clarity, and she has adult children, she's a grandmother to toddlers, right, and kind of little babies. So the child certainly have a beautiful family if, when she's no longer around, and she felt that was what she needed to do. So there's no judgment, from our end in terms of what it is that a person chooses. You've got to just figure out whether that fits in with your lifestyle. And of course, whether it feels that it's the best next path for you. So I think that makes a huge difference, having those conversations and those considerations, when either you're not quite sure, or you are in a situation where it's kind of a now and never decision, I think those questions are actually really useful to fall back on.
So you've mentioned donor egg. What other kind of options do women have if they are running out? They are running out of time and their fertility is not what it used to be.
Yeah, great question. Look, often what ends up happening, and this is what a lot of couples, they will go to a doctor, they're trying to conceive, and if they're older than, say, 35, they're immediately ushered to IVF to a point, right? Because it gets to about 42, 43, then they start to be told, look, you really shouldn't do IVF because, your chances are going to be very small given the age factor. Now, I look at that very differently. Okay, I look at, what are the hormones doing? What are the cycles doing? What are the other aspects of one's health doing? And what do we then need to do based on all of those components that is going to help to ensure that we have a better outcome, whether we're trying naturally or whether we're trying through IVF or whether we're trying, through donor egg. The major thing here is that women, when AMH starts to fall below, say, around a 4, we start to have a situation where the chances of natural conception are pretty much very similar, if not the same, as IVF, right? So then it just becomes a matter of cost and a matter of other factors that are getting in the way. Because, for example, if a couple has a situation where they have not only egg quality considerations or a low AMH or, different types of situations that are getting in the way for them, but they also have male factor infertility, then we might need to address that very differently to someone who perhaps has a younger partner and, has a very healthy younger partner that has really great sperm, okay? So that is a very different conversation that we would need to then, come into consideration, come to terms with. So a woman's chance of conception is really going to be very much dependent upon the partner she chooses as well, and the partner that she's with now. So, and of course, her own, reproductive ability, which can be improved. Egg quality is something that can be improved. We can't improve the egg pool. The number of eggs that a woman's born with is pretty, it declines more than, it stays the same throughout a woman's lifetime. And so basically, from the moment of birth, we, are having a situation where we're kind of losing or dropping eggs from the whole time until obviously menopause hits. Yeah. And so what ends up happening is that whilst men's fertility is more stable, because it doesn't have such a reliance on huge variations within the cycle. A woman can only get pregnant one time in a month. The egg literally lasts between 12 to 24 hours in an entire month, right? Whereas men have sperm throughout the whole month, okay? But it doesn't mean that he's necessarily going to be healthier or better able to affect the pregnancy by that being the case, because it will be dependent on the female. And the reverse is also true. If a male has certain health concerns, health considerations, factors that, impede him from being at his very best in terms of reproductive function, even if he does have sperm throughout the whole month, it's not going to help us with the situation that we've mentioned before in helping the egg to do everything that it can to have the best possible outcome. So a woman's chances is very much going to also be dependent on factors that are outside of her control. Partner, environmental factors, a whole lot of things that we need to take into consideration there.
It really sounds like it's not a one size fits all. It's a very unique and individual approach that you go through.
Yeah, absolutely. The reason is that, and I talk about this all the time with my patients in the clinic, for 10 couples that have the same diagnosis, right? And typically, mind you, it's an unexplained infertility diagnosis. But even if it is an explained diagnosis, like, for example, low concentration, low count, low motility of sperm, like any of those things that are present in a particular case or in a particular situation, if you have 10 couples with that same diagnosis, the reasons as to why that diagnosis is present is often different 10 times.
Oh.
Right? And so, you know, for one person, it might be that they drink too much. For another person, it might be that their work occupational hazards are a problem. For another person, it might be that they're nutritionally deficient. For another person, it might be that they're overtraining. For another, you see, so the reality is that there can be 10 different reasons. In fact, there are a multiple variation of different reasons as to why somebody might have that same diagnosis, and how to therefore address that condition is going to very much depend upon all of the factors that are causing. Can you see? It's that whole chain reaction that we're talking about again. It's, you know, what are the factors that are causing the end result that we see, which might be low count, low motility, low concentration, whatever it is. So from that perspective, we really need to be very diligent in figuring out, you know, and certainly the way that we work is we start to build tables of correlation for our patients when we start to get their information, and be able to then backtrack those biochemical pathways to understand what are the changes, adjustments, things that need to be addressed in order to be able to, again, fine-tune the needs of those particular biochemical pathways, so that we can get a different result on the other side of it.
Wow. If you're listening and you're getting a little bit overwhelmed by all of this information, Gabriela, how can people work with you? How can you help guide them through all of this information?
Yeah, it does get overwhelming. I think that after 20 years, I got immune to the overwhelm, you know, side of things. But
there's so many possibilities. It could be this, could be that, and
absolutely. And you know, and look, you know, often people are trying to figure this out for themselves, and this is the really most difficult thing, because you know, you don't have necessarily the training. Like if I was to try and fix my car, geez, where would I even begin? I have no idea, you know? So it's like I would have to go and see a professional, someone who actually is trained and understands exactly what needs to happen. And this situation is very similar. You know, people try and piece these things together, and it becomes problematic. But one thing that I will say, and I think that it's so important to always, you know, be learning, and education is key. It's crucial to being able to really truly understand what is it that you can do. How can you improve your chances? What are the factors that you can actually put in place that are going to help you have a different result? And towards that end, I mean, we have now taken over 137,000 people in more than 100 countries through various programs. We have a free online program that we run, you know, for people who are in the situation of wanting to get pregnant and have been having difficulties, and it's called the Fertility Challenge. And in the Fertility Challenge, what I do is I take 300 couples maximum. We've actually now, we used to do this with thousands of people in an event, but I realized over the years that, you know, I like the ability to be able to connect and really be able to guide, you know, the couples who are going through this process. So we've really made it a very nice, small, intimate event, and where I give a lot of personalized support throughout a 12-day period. You know, we go through an education piece, we then go through a task, they get these things done, and they start to understand, you know, from a contextual perspective, what are all of the things that are getting in the way? How do we address it? And we start to make some headway through the implementation side of what it is that needs to be done. So that's a great event, you know, for people who perhaps have been trying to conceive for over 2 years, or have experienced recurrent miscarriage, or are in a situation where they just feel like they want to fast track their results in the best way they can. That's definitely something that I would recommend. And then, of course, you know, there's the book, the Fertility Breakthrough book, that I'd be very happy to gift to your listeners. And, you know, all they would need to do is go to fertilitybreakthrough.com, which is our website, and fill out the contact form there. They do have to make sure they mention that they've heard me speak in Jennifer Harrington's podcast, because otherwise they will be told to buy the book as opposed to be gifted it. But if you complete the contact form and just say, you know, I've heard Gabriela Rosa speak in Jennifer Harrington's podcast, and she was gifting a book, and I would love to have a copy, we would absolutely be delighted to send that through to your listeners, Jennifer.
Well, on behalf of all my listeners, that is very generous, and thank you very much. But I also wanted to ask, if people are interested in the challenge that you've just mentioned, how do they also get involved with the challenge?
Yeah, absolutely. There is a place on our website to register. So they can go ahead and just get onto the website, fertilitybreakthrough.com, and just go in there and register. They will also be able to, I mean, gosh, by these days, they probably can just Google Fertility Challenge Gabriela Rosa, and there will be some way of registering in there as well. But just our website is the most reliable place because there is an application process for the challenge now. So what people have to do is that they need to register, and then they need to actually complete a questionnaire to apply to participate, because we just want to make sure, the key thing, and this is the discerning piece that we've become very clear about over the years, is that when people are focused on doing what it takes to transform their results, they get amazing results. But when people are kind of like, it's that whole conversation that we were having before, do I get a puppy or not? If I'm kind of deliberating and ambivalent and don't really I'm not really focused or committed to doing the process, they don't get a result. And I really want to work with people who absolutely are committed, they're focused, they're determined to get their outcome. And so we've put that, next or extra step in place so that we know that the people who are coming into the challenge really are ready to get in there and do the work and complete it and get the best results for themselves that they can.
Oh, and I like the idea that it's limited. Like for me, I like to know that there's smaller numbers, it's more intimate, there's more interaction. I'm actually going to hear from you, not from everyone else. So I think that's a good thing that you're limiting the numbers.
We really enjoy. I really enjoy that that personal interaction. So it's been wonderful.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. I'm going to put in all the details in the show notes. So we'll put in your website, we'll put in the contact form if people want to grab the complimentary copy of your book. Congratulations on your book. I heard it was a bestseller. So that is... Yes.
It ended up making bestseller in all the countries that it serves, it was US, UK, Australia. So that was really lovely.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Jennifer. It's been wonderful to talk to you. I really appreciate your time as well, and we'll connect at some time down the track.
Awesome. Bye for now.
Bye for now.
Well, I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Gabriela Rosa. How generous is she? Not only with her time to talk to us today, but also in her offer of a copy of her free best-selling book, Fertility Breakthrough, Overcoming Infertility and Recurrent Miscarriage When Other Treatments Have Failed. Well, I hope you have absolutely loved our conversation, and I look forward to chatting with you again next week. Thank you for listening to Menopause Natural Solution. This podcast contains general information about menopause. It is provided as a guide and is not intended to replace medical advice. Opinions of guests of their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests.